Hello guys, how's it going? My name is Dalaran. I gotta check out some of the hunter abilities currently available from all the 4 different covenants. It took me a couple days to compile this together, and I kind of want to show off some of these abilities, talk a bit about them. But in this video, I really will not be able to compare them in terms of my favorite to least favorite. I kind of like all of them, and I think these all are fairly well balanced where they can be used in a variety of different situations with variety of different power that they all have. More power for the longer cooldowns, lower power for shorter cooldowns, but you have more uses or less uses. I feel like hunters actually are looking quite interesting. So let's dive into what abilities hunters are getting from various covenants in Shadowlands. The first covenant ability we'll be taking a look at are from the Necro Lords, which is the Death Chakram. I will be honest, this ability looks a little bit funky, so I feel like the visuals are not finalized. It seems there's 2 different visuals, one whether it bounces between multiple targets, and there's another visual when it does single target damage. But this ability, while not visually all that amazing just yet, and I think it's going to improve in the long term, is actually quite a powerful ability. The chakram will bounce up to 7 times. It'll bounce to a single target or between multiple enemies if it can, and each time it deals damage, its damage is increased by 15%, so the final hit is going to be the strongest, and this ability, every time it deals damage, generates 3 focus. This ability has a fairly long range, 45-second cooldown, can be used on single target as well as in cleave situations, and on top of it generates your resources, which are very much needed on the alpha with a very low haste build that we have to play with currently in Shadowlands. At first I thought this ability would actually be kind of weird, but Blizzard did some tweaks for this ability before we got to test it to make it a little bit stronger for single target. So now this ability can be used on a singular boss or multiple enemies. I feel like where the strengths of this ability are going to be is in single target to focus down a singular enemy, or in cleave situation to get some spread damage. In PvP, however, I can definitely feel that this ability could be very strong if you are somehow able to single out an enemy away from their allies, allowing the chakram to just decimate that singular target. So far the damage in the alpha seems fairly, well, fair. I think it's just kind of a fun ability. It does look a little wonky and wacky, but I feel like the damage overall so far in the alpha, it just feels right. I'm kind of a fan of this ability, to be honest. The damage that it does happens very, very quickly too, so you don't have to worry about how long this ability will take before it ticks out its full numbers. When you pick the Necro Lords, you also get an ability to gain a shield, and for Hunter being a fairly squishy class, having an extra absorb shield on a 2-minute cooldown. This absorb shield can also be used when you have dead enemies nearby to make that shield stronger, taking essentially the essence of the enemies that you have slain in order to beef up that shield. The stronger the enemy that you have slain, the stronger the shield itself is as well. A damaging ability that has some cleave and single target potential. That's actually very quick in terms of the damage output. It has a little bit of flexibility in how you apply it, and with a shield, I think would actually be something hunters might look forward to when it comes to choosing this covenant. The next ability is going to be from the Kyrian Covenant, which is called Resonating Arrow. Fire a resonating arrow in a target location. Enemies within that area established by the arrow are 30% more likely to be crit. Enemies that stand in the area can also be attacked regarding of line of sight. So if you drop this arrow down, hide behind line of sight, in dungeons, PvP, or in raids, you'll still be able to range the enemy. I feel like this is less useful for survival hunters since so much of your toolkit is going to be you getting up in melee. Out of all the Covenant abilities, for Hunters, this Covenant ability is the only one that doesn't dish out damage by itself. It's just simply a debuffer for an enemy and I guess a buffer for yourself. This isn't going to be nearly as easy as some of the other Covenant abilities. This one will take planning and a lot more of your own effort in order to min-max the value of such an ability. However, I do like this one quite a lot. It does apply quite a bit of pressure. It can be used on single target or AoE, massive AoE or a cleave. It doesn't mean that you kind of want enemies to stay in one area, so tanks will have to keep the boss or an ad within the resonating area for you to get the value. But the ability of what you can do with this arrow, the potential that you might have in PvP situations, or even in dungeons, being able to avoid powerful blasts from a boss while still being able to burst out damage at them could be quite good. The 30% extra chance to crit synergizes pretty well with hunters in general, whether it's for beast mastery in terms of getting your procs for extra focus, or simply just raw damage if you're marksman or survival. Overall, I'd say this ability is actually, while not an easy press button do damage type of an ability, is actually quite high in value, and I like it a lot. I think there's a lot of potential with this ability in general. I don't think it's bad, but it is definitely going to be stronger as we get better gear. Imagine going for a high crit build on a Shadowlands as a hunter, and then using this arrow in order to increase the amount of crits that you do. Now, crits are going to be quite big either way for any spec. And being able to use this ability also to dodge certain mechanics within raids and dungeons, hiding behind line of sight so you are not taking any damage from, let's say, a powerful blast from an enemy, or in PvP as the healer is looking to recuperate behind a wall, you send this arrow in their safety position and still continue to keep blasting the healer no matter where they go. I think something like this could be quite cool and exciting, so I don't want to write this ability off completely. The second ability you'll get from going with the Kyrian Covenant is a Steward, which is an hourly friend which will provide you ability to change talents and will provide you a weaker version of a health stone, like a healing tonic, but you'll be able to use it in 3 charges, which is actually quite good. The healing tonic is going to make a class that's generally squishy, like a hunter, just a little bit stronger. So if you're a hunter who is thinking about going Kyrian, I think that would actually be quite a decent covenant. The next Covenant ability will be from the Venthyr for the Hunter, which is called the Flayed Shot. Fires a shot at your enemy which will do shadow damage over time, and every time it takes some damage, has a chance to reset the cooldown of your kill shot and also make it usable on the enemy despite the health percentage the enemy is at. This ability has a 10 focus cost, which is not too much, and the shortest cooldown out of all the other Covenant abilities. This ability is probably the most straightforward one out of all the Hunter Covenant abilities, but it does look quite cool. I really like the style of ability and the look of every spell that the Venthyr Covenant has. I will be honest, that seems so far to be my favorite Covenant stylistically. But take a look at where Hunters are at with Flayed Shot. It seems like a single target dot that's fairly decent in its damage output. I like the fact that this ability has a chance to reset the cooldown of your kill shot and make it usable on any enemy. This will give you a little bit extra burst potential as this ability has the dot tick down. Probably will be better with a very high haste build, which will be perfect for survival hunters, but I guess for any other hunters as well. Since, for example, you have Marksman Hunter where the kill shot does so much of your damage, and the fact that you can have 2 stacks of kill shot, I wonder if he can give you back 2 stacks for you to fire back to back at an enemy. That's definitely going to be something to consider when it comes to picking your Covenant. The damage disability does seem pretty okay, but I think where the most benefit comes from is from its ability to reset your kill shot on an enemy, which can be used throughout the fight from the very start, but where this ability will excel, I think, is especially during the executes, where you have far more uses of your kill shot. Essentially, as a hunter, I think you'll start planning things like getting a kill shot, then applying Flayed Shot, in hopes that Flayed Shot resets your kill shot from time to time. So I think that could be a very, very strong ability to give a little bit extra punch to the hunter. The ability itself doesn't cost a lot of focus. Kill shot doesn't cost a lot of focus. So if you're someone who's always starved for focus, this ability might be the best choice for you to go. And with not having any gear at the beginning, I think the hunters that take Flayed Shot in the opener, while being a mostly fully single target ability, will find themselves at least playing around with focus far more often. And while Flayed Shot is attacking an enemy, Kill Shot that procs from Flayed Shot can be used on any target, so you don't always have to hit the target that is affected by the Covenant ability. You can hit side targets in order to, let's say, finish off an enemy that's super low in health, or start doing some damage onto the boss, or whatever it may be. But this ability is fairly simple, fairly cool. The other ability you get from going Venthyr is going to be the Door to Shadows, or Door Through Shadows. The name changes from time to time, but in the alpha, this ability lets you teleport to a targeted area within like 30-40 yard range, so it's not super far. For a class that's fairly mobile like Hunter, being able to reposition is nice but not really necessary, but I think in PvP this could be a very good ability. Since Hunter is a squishy class, having extra mobility to run away from targets is never a bad thing. Last ability for the Hunter Covenant is going to be from the Fae, called Wild Spirits. This ability is actually a pretty hefty cooldown, but with pretty hefty damage. Summon a Wild Spirit over a target area, and the ability itself looks very similar to like a Starfall, but a modified version. While in the target area, all targets that were under the area prior are marked with a wild mark for 15 seconds. Attacking enemies with a wild mark calls down a massive blast of nature damage from the sky to also blast the enemy. This ability is kind of like essentially the big nuke for hunters. If you can clump up a bunch of enemies, 2 enemies, a single boss, and just mess them up with a bunch of ability spam throughout the duration of this ability, this essentially could probably burst down a single target boss as effectively as it can burst down AoE targets. While all the other abilities gives you extra doodads to play with, like extra focus, kill shot procs, or maybe being able to line of sight your enemy but continuing to do damage to them, this ability is simple. Drop down this massive area with Call of the Wild and have enemies get marked by it, DPS the living hell out of the enemies, nuke them down as quickly as possible, and reap your rewards. Seems a very simple ability, but I don't hate it whatsoever. I think that there's some potential to this ability as well, especially when it comes to, let's say, maybe PvP. If this ability does well in single target as well as in AoE, you essentially have yourself a massive powerful cooldown to add and stack towards the Hunter toolkit. Generally, hunters have to play with cooldowns like Beast Mastery just cycles through cooldowns all the time. Marksman has cooldowns fairly often, so does Survival Hunter. So it feels like sometimes you do lots of damage, sometimes you do as much, but none of the cooldowns ever feel as impactful as that of a Mage's Combustion. It doesn't really have the same gravity. So maybe going with all your basic cooldowns, no matter what spec you play, plus Wild Call might give you that extra nuking potential you need during a very short moment for a massive burst window. The fact this ability can do single target, AoE, or cleave is perfect. It is set in a small area, however, so tanks are going to have to keep the enemies in your Wild Call. However, still, the damage I feel like is going to be more than enough, or at least right now in the alpha it feels like more than enough to justify keeping enemies in this area for a short amount of time. I really do wonder how strong it's going to be in PvP. If you can really lock someone down in this area with a stun and nuke him down, could this ability be essentially a one-shot rotation? The side ability for going Fey is to turn yourself into a fox and give yourself a small teleport from time to time. I don't think it's the worst ability ever, but for hunters being as mobile as they are already with disengage, going into fox and not being able to auto attack from a distance is gonna kind of suck, because if you do any damage while in fox form, you leave fox form. So I think it's kind of a good ability. I don't know how useful it's going to be. Maybe if you're looking to run away, being a squishy hunter, having extra mobility to escape your targets might be a good thing in the long run. Take a look at all the Hunter Covenant abilities. I cannot say that I hate any of them. I can't really say they're fair one over the other. I think all 4 of them are actually as close as they can be to what I would consider balanced, where one might be a little stronger in some specific situation, but all 3 of them are useful no matter what you do. So while a lot of people are trying to decide what is going to be the best in situation A, B, or C, or D, it feels like all these hunter abilities can technically be taken from any covenant based on, let's say, you want certain transmog, and still being able to be useful and viable with almost any of these abilities. The potential that these abilities hold, even though some of them just do straight up damage and others gives you extra benefits, I feel like there is a decent balance between these. Won't say it's perfect and 100% balanced, but it's a decent balance where it gives you a little bit more room to play with. Honestly, I feel like this is probably a great example if Blizzard wants to keep these abilities balanced and not gonna make Covenant something you'd switch to, like talent fields, which I think they really should if they can't balance them. This would be a pretty decent example to look at least in my opinion. Again, maybe the final numbers will change it, and they probably will, because now these abilities are finalized on numbers, but I like what they offer. I like the different playstyles they apply, and all of them feel very, very close, at least to me, when it comes to choosing which one might be best. Of course, you know, there's obvious ones in certain key situations, but generally all of them are fairly equal. So I can't say if I hate them or love them. They're really all, I kind of enjoy them all, to be honest. But thank you guys so much for checking out this video. You guys let me know your thoughts and comments below. Which of these are your favorite or least favorite? Let me know in the comments, and I'll see all of you guys in another one.